2022 gonna be an absolutely crazy period for blockchain, crypto, and Web 3.0. And it's a massive opportunity for you if you want to transition your career into Web 3.0. In this video series, I'm gonna cover how you're gonna do that. So let's jump into the video. Hi, this is Hardhat and welcome to my channel. On this channel, I focus on three things. Number one, help you become a Web3 blockchain ninja. Number two, solve climate emergency by promoting sustainable products. And number three, help you decode your life equation so that you can live a happy and meaningful life. So if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to my channel. Welcome back. In today's topic is development toolchain, and we're going to discuss about it, like why it's required. So whenever you want to work as a developer, right, I think there are three key distinct tasks, right? So you want to develop an application, whether you're working in Web 2 or Web 3, right? And then the second key task is that you want to test that code. And finally that you want to deploy it, right? And there are various things that you require basically a toolchain, right? So you need some tools that can help you with the creation of the project, say for an example. So you need a dummy project structure based on the best practice, right? You want to test your code, then you should have some of the scripts that are available. Like if you're coming from Java background, right? So you have Maven is one of that tool chain that you use basically to create your project structure and that, download various libraries and test your code. Same way if you're coming from a JavaScript background, right? And if you're working on React, so you might have seen Create React App. So these are similar development toolchain that you use for blockchain development, right? Because it's quite difficult in terms of when you're working on a, peer-to-peer network, you need some local blockchain environment so that you can test your code. And if you want to deploy it in a test environment, then you can use these tools to actually help you with that development process. So it actually makes your life easy as a developer. So the key thing, if you're working on a blockchain, what are the key programming languages that you use? So by far the most common you will hear about Solidity, and the second one is Rust, right? So if you're working on Solana, you might have heard about Rust is the programming language for the smart contract. But mostly if you're heard about any EVM compatible, so you might have worked on Solidity. And Solidity is by far the Ethereum actually introduced the language Solidity, which was the first language for the smart contract, right? So Hardhat is basically another, it's by default the de facto standard now, right? So if you look at various DeFi applications that are built in Web3, they pretty much use Hardhat. When I started working 2 years back, Truffle was one of the toolchain that was available, or you had this ID called Remix, and I'm gonna go into the detail, right? And so you have basically, and if you're working on a Python, right? So you have Brownie. So you can bake some recipes, and based on that, it give you the project structure. So let me show you how it look like, right? So if you are not comfortable installing any of these tools, for Hardhat, you need Node Package Manager and NPX for an example. For Brownie, you need to install some Python dependencies and everything. So all of these tools have very good documentation in terms of if you want to install those. If you don't want to install anything, the simplest method to get started with some of the programming language like Solidity for an example. So there is an ID called Remix. And by default, it has all of the details, right? So so this is a simple storage solution example, right? So this is written in Solidity. What I'm trying to do in this is, I just want to store a number on blockchain, and that's pretty much it, right? So by default, it comes with the compiler. So you can select different compiler version. 2 years back, people were actually working on 0.4, 0.5. Most of the decentralized finance Uniswap, I've seen they are still using 0.6 or something. But start with and there were some limitations in the initial language and those has been remediated in latest version. So go with the latest version, but I'm just giving practical example, right? There will be applications that are built on version as 0.5 or 0.6, right? Because it's very hard to change the code when you deploy it on the blockchain, right? And it's very costly if you want to change your version from one compiler to another, because it's quite difficult in that way, in terms of you have to do the whole migration of your users who have already written on the blockchain. So what I'm trying to do is once you have this compiler, you can just simply compile it. Okay. And then by default, it gives you VMs, right? And the VM has various account, right? So as I said, that for every, if you have to write something on the blockchain, you require some cryptocurrency token. So if you're working on Ethereum, it's gonna be Ether. If it's Avalanche, or then it's gonna be Avex, right? And every blockchain will have its native token. So like I'm working on Ethereum, so it's gonna be Ether. And by default, it gives you various accounts, and all of them has like 100 Ether, right? So you can just play around, and I can simply sort of deploy that. So you will see that it deployed that contract, and now I can store any number in it, right? So say for example, I just want to store, and this is gonna do a transaction, and this data is now stored on the blockchain, and I can sort of retrieve it. So don't worry about the syntax of Solidity. I will have a separate session on covering all of the basics of the Solidity, how you can write smart contracts. So this is something that you can play with, right? And most of the beginners actually start with the Remix, right? Because it has, you don't have to do anything. It's a web browser. You just open it and just play around. And it has, like, if you want to deploy it on some of the test network, right? So I can simply click on injected Web3. And by default, like, it's in Ropsten. So if I click on deploy, it's gonna open MetaMask, and we will cover the topic like of the wallets also, but then it can deploy on the test network. So by default, like, every blockchain that you will work in, right, will have some of the test environment, right? So Ropsten, Coven, these are the test environment that you can use, and you can configure your development toolchain to work with all of these environments, right? So you go through the site of like Hardhat, and it has given, and I can just show you quickly also, right? How it look like, right? So I'm just running Brownie bake token, right? And what it's gonna do is, like, if I go and see, it basically give me a structure, of the folder, and I can compile and stuff. So let me just open that in Visual Studio Code. So by default, like, this is like, it has baked me or given me a project structure, right? Which has like, by default, it's given me contracts, interfaces, and everything, right? So this is like a token, ERC20 token, all of the, and again, don't worry about if you don't understand it, because we'll cover Solidity in a separate series. And then I can simply compile these, right? So let me just, so if I compile it, it's going to compile and create this token. And, by default, it's going to give you an API, which you're going to use with your, front-end application. So by default, when you compile, it's give you an API, basically, the smart contract. And this is kind of interface through which your front-end actually know, what are the different function and how to call those. So like, I have done the, so by default, it has given me a smart contract. I'm going to put that into directory. It has given me tools so that I can compile my smart contracts, right? And I can test that. I can deploy that. I can configure so that it can run on different test environments. Same is like if you're coming from JavaScript background, right? So I can create a sample project, right? And by default, I'm saying that, okay, let's create in here, right? And it's going to create, again, it's going to install, like, if you've worked on Node.js and Node Package Manager, so it's installing all of these dependencies and libraries, right? It makes your life easy as a developer, right? So if you're a beginner, start with Remix. I actually don't use it. I will probably go with Hardhat and Brownie. So that's what I use, because it's not just about, use web application, but I need the complete tool chain, right? So that I can test, I can deploy my code, right? So this is like, these are the tools that are actually specific to developer, and based on your interest, it makes your life easy to actually develop application on Web3. So again, this is like specific to blockchain. all of these development environment or toolchain. Like if you're working on a front-end application, that's a separate toolchain that you're gonna use. Like if I work on React for an example, so I'm gonna use Create React App, a boilerplate, and then you can use a mix of it, right? So once this development environment comes, so think of it as a backend, right? So it's a backend development toolchain. So with that, I hope you enjoy this. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel.